basically the word DEX or the word decentralized has been so far distorted away from its true meaning that basically anything with an on-chain program now is able to qualify. And why we're super passionate about it is because we genuinely believe that on-chain end-state DeFi or end-state exchange needs to be decentralized. The majority of teams now are able to sort of operate in that gray area and gaslight the wider community into we've launched a DEX or we've launched this decentralized product, and no one really calls it out because no one really understands what that truly means. Layer one blockchains like Ethereum, Solana, and even the way we're built is multi-operate. Everyone receives the same state of the order book and you have a consensus agreement that people come to. The state that everyone has received is correct, and there's no singular entity that's able to sort of reorder those transactions, censor those transactions, and there's no reliance on a singular entity as well. So the whole goal for us here is to sort of build something where we can close the laptop tomorrow and it run without us.
What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another Beluga live stream. I'm Alpha, your 21-year-old crypto degen, king of the trenches. We are here with Kobe from Bulk. They are building the future of perp dexes on chain. I'm here with my co-host, Will McKinnon. Will, what's going on?
Hey guys, yeah, excited to be here for another conversation. I know we've been doing two in the same week a lot, so I hope you guys aren't getting tired of listening to us, but super excited to chat with Kdot today.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, guys.
For those who do not know us, we are Beluga. Beluga is the nerd wallet for crypto. We stay in the trenches 24/7, so you do not have to. We have a newsletter that goes out 3 times a week. It gives you free alpha sent straight to your inbox. It's written by Will. It is the best writing in crypto. We also have articles covering all things going on in crypto. And then finally, we have this podcast with the most interesting people in crypto. So if you like this and want to see more great live streams, make sure that you like, comment, follow, and retweet. As an added bonus, I made a deal with our CEO and my mom that if this gets on the trending page, I will drop out of college and record it. I just took a midterm today and it was not fun. I like this a lot more. So please make sure that you retweet this so that I can leave school. Without further ado, Kdot, how'd you get into crypto?
So I was always sort of possibly trying to make a little bit of my savings work while I was a network engineer. So any sort of like spare money I had, I'd be playing around with like Forex and some stock trading on like eToro and HL. Not really knowing what to do. This is back in 2016, 2015, 2016. And yeah, as I started getting like more and more involved with that, sort of evolving on, you know, how things work there, start to obviously make it very hard to ignore the insane gains that were sort of like being portrayed on crypto. For go and figure out what this is all about, understand what the rave is. And yeah, pretty much from day one going into the ecosystem was just around people that I genuinely align with, just a load of, you know, derplets just trying to navigate this new emerging technology and everything that came with it, right? And I think that a large part of my onboarding was like NFTs and their communities there. But yeah, even before that, it was more so just passive investing, but really knew I wanted to sort of make it a career when I was playing around with NFTs and understanding how communities form around particular token narratives.
I know you just made Aiden very happy by mentioning NFTs, but we won't go down that road just yet. We'd love to hear some more about Bulk, what you guys are building, what your role is at Bulk, and yeah, tell us more.
Sure. So yeah, I'm one of the founders. I'm the non-technical idiot when it comes to bulk trade. But yeah,
The network engineer is the non-technical on the team.
But yeah, I mean, we're a global permissionless on-chain exchange aiming to be, you know, purely decentralized, one of the fastest, if not the fastest, with a whole host of applications and products and features, whether that's, you know, portfolio margin, whether that's unified margin accounts, whether that's risk engines, and loads of other stuff I'm sure we'll get into as we go through this conversation. But the long and short of it is we are a trading venue that we want to be able to house any type of financial market and any type of financial instrument. So when we talk trading, we don't just want to be someone or people that are able to just facilitate cryptocurrencies and transactions here, but we want to really sort of like reinvent what the wheel is and the current like NYSE and CME span experiences and bring those on chain for the people that want to utilize them.
Will and I were actually texting about this yesterday about how the purpose of blockchain is decentralization. And if your product is not decentralized, then you just used a really overcomplicated technology in order to do something that you could just do in a centralized Web 2 way. So why is decentralization important to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what you're saying, right? It's core ethos, is what this entire industry has been founded on. But the problem we're seeing today is like that narrative has been made such a gray area now, to the point of you have like these single sequencers, layer twos, these roll ups. And basically, the word DEX or the word decentralized has been so far distorted away from its true meaning that basically anything with an on-chain program now is able to qualify. And I think why it's important is because, like you rightly said, we don't just want to reinvent Web 2 with extra steps. It needs to offer more than just a no KYC environment to really sort of like tap into the possibilities of what this tech enables. But laziness, greed, the wrong people with the wrong incentives, or maybe just down to skill issues and gaslighting, that we've sort of come so far away from what that truly means. And why we're super passionate about it is because we genuinely believe that on-chain end-state DeFi or end-state exchange needs to be decentralized. And there's a lot of even if you're looking at like the top 10, I'll make it relevant to perp exchanges, but this is sort of goes for protocols as well, is the top 10 perp exchanges that are perp dexes, there's not a single one of them that's censorship resistant. And that's kind of like a massive red flag to me, right? Because at least with a centralized exchange, you have this trusted entity that they have to submit financial audits for, they're regulated, you have some form of legal protection. But when you're looking at like these on-chain exchanges or dexes that aren't really dexes, you're basically having the same level of ownership what that centralized exchange does, but without all of the red tape of legal structures and entities and things that would protect you. So you're really just passing on that custody from centralized exchanges to a load of random people on the internet, just because they've managed to build something that's semi-aligned with crypto. And that's not how I see end-state DeFi at all.
What's the joke about crypto bros say they don't trust banks, but they keep their money in a browser extension?
Yeah, but again,
we all have these stories, right? Like trusting some random guy you met in a Discord with like unimaginable amounts of money. Like it is kind of somewhat what we're built on. It's like the highest trustless society.
Yeah, and
Seriously.
I think a lot of it is down to genuinely an education gap. Like you can speak to, I won't name any particular names, to some maxis of these protocols and exchanges that will scream at you till they're blue in the face and say it's decentralized because the founding team and the ecosystem around it is listing it as a DEX or as decentralized. But what that actually means and how that actually qualifies, I think like it's an even smaller number of people that truly grasp the concept of what the differences are. And that was what I was saying a moment ago about like really distorting and creating that gray areas. Like the majority of teams now are able to sort of operate in that gray area and gaslight the wider community into, well, we've launched a DEX or we've launched this decentralized product. And no one really calls it out because no one really understands what that truly means, right? But the simplest way that I can put it and the simplest way that I try to sort of explain it to people is if the founding team can't switch off their nodes, shut their laptops and walk away without the protocol falling over, it's not decentralized, right? This whole idea of this protocol needs to survive without the core contributing or founding team having to regularly update it. So the way we're sort of building our exchange out, and you can imagine Bulk basically built directly into a Solana mainnet validator stack. So you tap into that economic security of Solana mainnet validators, and now you have basically every validator receiving the same state of the order book. So where you have like your layer twos, your roll ups, or these single sequencers where the team is the single source of truth, they now have to push this truth, and then all the other validators, they're not full nodes, but all these other validators basically say, yeah, okay, this is what we've seen, and we go on from there. But the source source of truth is coming from a singular entity, which is going back to like that sex comparison a moment ago, whereas like layer one blockchains like Ethereum, Solana, and even the way we're built is multi-operator. Everyone receives the same state of the order book, and you have a consensus agreement that people come to that the state that everyone has received is correct, and there's no singular entity that's able to sort of reorder those transactions, censor those transactions, and there's no reliance on a singular entity as well. So the whole goal for us here is to sort of build something where we can close the laptop tomorrow and it run without us. And I don't think you can really claim to be decentralized if that's not your end goal or where you are today.
Do you
Go
think,
for it.
came to my mind. Do you think that there are some like big institutional investors who sort of rely on that advantage of being able to have relationships where the order book can get swapped around in your favor?
Yeah, I mean, look, we've seen it, right? We've seen it in a lot of these large perp exchanges today, and the ones that we haven't seen it on, we also aren't able to verify that it doesn't happen. You know, Lighter came under fire during the TG around this exact thing, right? They offered some preferential bumps in deals to some more sophisticated flow to get that initial liquidity. And look, I totally understand why people do it, because liquidity is king when it comes to an exchange venue, right? And you need to ensure these types of things are available day one. But it does come back to bite you when you're claiming to be open, transparent, true, and fair, and then these backroom deals are happening. So, do they rely on them? No. Will they turn them down? Absolutely not, right? And it's now up to the exchange founders or the protocol owners to be able to incentivize everyone enough to where it's now, look, this is the mind share, this is the taker volume that we're planning on having, this is the sort of hype leading up to things, this is the infrastructure, and this is the opportunity, and now everyone can come on a level playing field and play. But yeah, I think this has happened right across the board, right? And for as long as you're willing to give out this free money to institutions or even to anyone else, right? Look at airdrops, then it's never going to get said no. So it's up to the industry leaders and the founders of these protocols and exchanges to really sort of like stand by their guns and take the risk of being able to say, no, this is a level playing field. What we see is what we get, and there's no preferential treatment across the stack.
I'd love to talk about your kind of go-to-market strategy and how, obviously there are a lot of perp dexes out there, even on Solana. I think the biggest is Jupiter, who's obviously, a massive name in the Solana ecosystem. How are you guys thinking about, competing with all of these names and within that sector of the industry?
Yeah, so I think it's no secret at the moment that Solana is crying out for like a premier perp exchange, perp venue, right? Like there's been, for the ecosystem that pioneered on-chain clubs, it really did sort of like fall over in terms of evolution of those up to what we see now with like the Hyperliquids, the Lighters, and whoever else. And there is a number of reasons as to why. Again, this isn't a Solana specific problem. Like when you're looking at a general purpose blockchain like a layer one is, like Ethereum, Solana, whoever else, Sui, Aptos, right? Like they all have constraints when it comes to performance when you're talking about like the upper echelons of HFT. So you're looking at these top 5, top 7 perp exchanges. They're running sub 100 ms. They don't have like compute limits that typical blocks do. They don't have lengthy block times, and there's a number of other sort of technical bottlenecks, so to speak, that you really have to sort of like abide by and work within when you're building natively to an L1. But when you're comparing those to the likes of our industry leaders today, there are still a lot to be desired in terms of what you're able to do with sophisticated flow. I think retail don't really feel it as much, particularly unsophisticated taker flow. It's like, I mean, even me myself, for the two
I'm in
years ago,
that zone.
I was
Unsophisticated
spamming
taker
Duke
flow.
perps, right? And Duke perps have like incredibly high fees, but it's a very easy to use perpetual venue. It's not an order book, but it serves its purpose, right? But then when you're actually looking at bringing NASDAQ on chain, which is like the ultimate goal, and then on from there, you can't have these things that are hindered by technical bottlenecks. So what like us, for example, are able to do and get around that is, while we are sync compatible with Solana, there's no bridging needed. We also have our own consensus on our own network. So you can imagine us, like, we don't have like NFT minting, payments, and all this sort of stuff. All we have is a high performance trading environment. So the order book itself is a network, and that affords us some certain benefits that you get. So you get the economic security and the reliability of Solana, but then you also now have gasless trading, sub 20 millisecond matching. We're doing up to like 1 million OPS at the moment. That's what, 100k TPS, maintaining 20 millisecond latency, and you just can't get that on a layer one chain today. So the initial go to market is obviously like bringing an experience to Solana where people aren't having to bridge their funds. We're still fully composable with the entire ecosystem. So what we'll be able to do on bulk with dynamic risk engines and unified margin accounts is, you can imagine your lend borrow position on Camino. You can now log in on bulk with that wallet, and without tokenizing, without unwinding, you're now able to use that lend borrow position as collateral to trade perpetuals. And that's sort of like rippled throughout the stack, and we can be composable with any application on the layer one today. So you're seeing Hyperliquid do this at the moment, right? They're trying to build out their ecosystem beyond just a trading environment, beyond perps. They want lending, they want payments, they want these yield solutions, PTYTs, and all these sorts of things that typically take a very long time to build out. But Solana already has that super rich ecosystem of mature businesses, and now what we're doing is slapping like a super high performance trading layer as a sidecar that is able to be sync compatible with all of these products and services to sort of like offer that complete experience without having to have internally a 200-person team to help scale out all of these verticals. So not only do we have like a genuine narrative that makes Solana competitive in perpetuals, but we now have this ready-made environment to sort of tap into all of these existing communities that we can really sort of like prove venue with and scale as a faster rate.
Does Solana's, and Will is probably gonna like this question, does Solana's lack of decentralization bother you?
I mean, this is and I mean, all the respect in the world here. This is kind of a technically ignorant question because it's not centralized. Like, if you're looking at what decentralized and centralized is, and we were saying, having the conversation at the start of the call, right? It's like the founding team can turn off their nodes, they can turn off their computers and walk away, and the network is running just fine. And we've seen that hold up, even when like they had the AWS outages and we had like base and all these L2s go down. Solana was ticking along just fine. Right now, the argument is now, is it as decentralized as Ethereum? And the obvious answer is no. Like, Ethereum's got way more nodes, but like, what is the threshold here, right? And yeah, I think it's probably a technically ignorant question to ask, like, why is it not decentralized, or how is it decentralized? Because like the straight answer is that it is. And you got now a situation of, do you scale to an impractical level, which is what Ethereum have done, and lose execution to layer twos and other execution environments, or do you sort of like find that minimum viable threshold of what is acceptable and what is economically secure, and then be able to sort of maintain execution? And Solana is going through that cycle at the moment where they've scaled and has like they're running like 700 to 800 full nodes at the moment. So they've scaled to a point where like it's sufficient decentralization, and now it's around honing in on the execution so they don't make the same mistakes that Ethereum did and lose that execution to the likes of ourselves and various roll-ups and layer twos that are going to be launching as a consequence.
So Will is our local ETH maxi. Will, not to put you in a debate with the guest, but it's officially on. I'll let you rebuttal.
No, I mean, I would say I generally agree. Like, I think the question he asked, I would not have asked. I would have posed the point that it's not as decentralized as ETH, which I think, as you said, is true. Yeah, I mean, look, like, I think there's kind of we're in a gray area, I think, as an industry, and as far as I'm concerned, we don't really know what the final answer ends up being, because you do have these kinds of push and pull forces. To your point, do you scale to almost unimaginable unimaginable levels of decentralization and sacrifice, throughput and latency of those good things that you need, or do you go the other way? Is there some middle ground there? I mean, I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, we're kind of still in the testing stages of this question. Like, I think it's pretty clear that like thousands of layer twos with single sequencers is probably not the answer. I know that Solana's gone through a couple different structure, call it reformations, looking for different answers. We'll see, I guess, is kind of where I'm at. But yeah, I'm also an Ethereum guy.
No, I appreciate it, right? And let's sort of piggyback on what you're saying here. It's like, do you go the network state route where it's as decentralized as you can possibly make it, or do you want this like practical execution environment where you can now power a plethora of applications to build and scale on the chain? Because like you look at chain revenues and what's important and what's not, and I guess it's down to the goal of each protocol owner or ecosystem to decide what's important to them. And yeah, there's two very different approaches to the situation, and again, we're still very early in the stages of what is right and what is wrong and what's acceptable. I think that we can all agree here that both of them are light years more decentralized than the majority of things that are being called decentralized are today. But
Very
yeah,
true.
again, the argument here is this practicality versus technicality, right? And it's again, what is your chain meant for? What is the end goal of your chain? And if that's to be like the network state that people can tap into and build up, then fine. Or if that's to be an execution layer that can house finance and all that stuff, that's fine as well, right? And there's a number of bets being made, and I'm not saying either are right or wrong, or either will work in the long term. But I think those two that we've been speaking about as leaders are pretty good examples as to what things can do and what things can unlock.
Completely agreed. I also think, even though we all enjoy making fun of the opposite side, I do think that to have a war between, I'm counting Bitcoin in its own field, but to have a war between the two most successful products that programmable crypto has produced, given, the size of our industry right now, is like probably not the right direction. So, but yeah, no, like it's two different approaches. I think there are merits to both. I'm
Well,
a decentralization guy.
the only fair way to settle this is a Muay Thai fight, ETH versus Sol. We'll find our best guy.
Might have to I'll pick a champion. I don't know if I'm getting down there on the mat with Kdot.
Yeah, I'm retired for now, right? I've got a mainnet to ship. Maybe after.
Yeah, actually, well, that brings us to a good point. What can people listening expect from mainnet? When's it coming? Anything exciting there?
Yeah, so we've been in a beta testnet phase now for a little while, just sort of like fine tuning the product experience. And then we'll be moving to open testnet in the next couple of weeks here, where and we've got an article about this on the main page if people want to go and check it out. But this isn't going to be your average testnet, right? This isn't going to be in a testnet environment. This is going to be running on mainnet validators, and it's just going to be obviously with like mock USD. So it's going to be basically a mainnet but paper trading, and what that will basically afford us is a good view into sort of how certain behaviors work, but also really get to showcase the capabilities of the performance that we have. So it'll be running on 21 mainnet validators that are accountable for around 4 or 5% of Solana's total stake right now. And so yeah, we're gonna have plenty of throughput to test, plenty of users to test, and I'm excited to be able to showcase the performance. And it's kind of going back to what we were saying about earlier. It's like, can decentralized be performant? What does that look like? And our entire argument is we're going to leave with the product and show you. So just because it is censorship resistant doesn't mean it needs to be slow. So you're going to see an extremely fast trading environment that is fully censorship resistant on day one. So that's the plan of testnet. And then yeah, from there it's going to be one like major update between testnet and mainnet to add all like the products and features that aren't currently on testnet day one. And then we go to mainnet as soon as possible. That's going to be Q2. Yeah, I would like it earlier in Q2 if I can. If I'm being realistic, it'll probably be mid to later Q2. But yeah, I'm very confident that once we do get live, we've got a serious competitor on our hands to the wider landscape.
Do institutional investors have interest in leverage beyond 2 or 3x? It seems the main selling point of like the 20x plus leverage is retail investors who are trying to get rich quick.
So yes and no. So I would say no. Like if you're talking about institutions making like purely directional bets, then no, that's gambling, right? And no one like of size really does that unless you get like the odd couple of outliers that made a lot of money leverage trading and now seem to think they've got the sweet science. But funds that are like institutions that are funded elsewhere and handling other client money and stuff, no. But that doesn't mean they don't use high leverage, right? So one of the things that's like really cool about what we do with Portfolio Margin Pro is we enable like a relative value. So you can long one asset and short another correlated asset, which is giving you like say on 50x. So it's a high notional leverage, but with a low net exposure. So you can basically, and I posted about this yesterday, for a $300,000 position notional, like 150 long on Bitcoin, 150 short on Ethereum, you're using $2,000 worth of collateral as opposed to the six it would typically need on the 50x. So it's about like what that risk is relative to who the traders are. I'm not saying everyone will run that high leverage on for institutions, but it's far less risky than just a pure directional bet. So yeah, you can do that. You can do basis trades or cash and carries and statistical arbs like pair trades and mean reversion strategies, which yeah, like they're typically higher leverage than 2 or 3x. But it's not the same level of risk that we would typically attribute that level of leverage with, which is what retail typically do, which is the get rich quick scheme, right? It's like, yeah, I've got this, $1,000. I'm going 50x long, and I'm hoping it goes to X, Y, and Z. Like that's much more of a retail focus. But then you will also get some institutions that are doing some hedge or some funding rate arbs that will play with over 20x leverage. But again, it's utilizing the leverage to low margin requirement rather than taking a directional bet to the up or down side.
I have to ask this question. Are you a leverage trader yourself?
Yeah, so that's just a bit of background on me and June. So June's like been building these systems since he was 11 years old. Like he's a wonder kid, that 168 IQ genius. Yeah, building distributed systems and HFT for most of his life. But I'm on the other side. I'm the complete idiot degenerate. I'm the uninformed flow that will Valhalla, far too much size into far too much leverage. Obviously, over the last couple of years, I've settled down a lot more than what I used to do. But yeah, ultimately, this is why like I'm very confident in product and I'm so proud of what we've been able to build because I am the end user, right? And like June is from a sophisticated standpoint, and I am from a uninformed flow standpoint. And yeah, I've been trenching. I've been in the meme coin trenches for years. I've been trading leverage for years, and yeah, I live for it. I love the game, but obviously now being in the position I am, I need to be a bit more sensible. And not only that, like I haven't really got the time to be staring at charts, losing my hairline over it. So I don't trade as much anymore. But yeah, that's how I made the majority of my money in the space.
What's the threshold of leverage that you would consider to be gambling?
It depends on size, right? Like I personally like if you're doing anything over 5 or 10, I would say you're gambling. But again, if you're doing 20x leverage, but you've got enough margin to take you down to like a 40k, 30k Bitcoin, then is it as much of a gamble? Probably not. So I guess like what I would say is like straight gambling is the people that load a certain amount of money in their account and that money just gets dumped into a leverage trade, like whatever that leverage is. Right? And there's different risk tolerances for different people, but the majority of people that are like sub 5k balances are over 20x leverage.
I know October 10th, the big liquidation day, has been, a huge conversation over the last few months. We're potentially still reeling from the price impacts of that. Love to hear your thoughts on like what happened. And, given the way it happened, how are you guys looking at that from like a risk standpoint for your platform?
Yeah, so
Complicated question, I know, but
I mean, it's we need to be careful how we answer, right? Because yeah, there's
yeah.
some legal departments that might send
Yeah,
some
yeah, of
letters,
course.
but
Of course.
I do think it was a systematic failure paired with a wider macro semi black swan with like the tariff news and everything else what was going on in the world. But it was a systematic failure, in my opinion. There was a massive liquidity vacuum there was steep pegs, there was a massive unwinding of leverage, which is one of the negatives that you do have to having such a leveraged ecosystem where, we've got leverage on looped on leverage on borrow on leverage, where it doesn't take a lot of volatility to really start unwinding these. And then when you have exchanges starting to pull liquidity, makers not being able to refresh quotes or cancel quotes and everything else that happened on the day, you are left with an absolute shitstorm that resulted in exactly what it did. Could we have handled things better as an ecosystem? Yes, but this is why it's important to call out the structures that we are claiming that there's something they're not, because when things like this do happen, people lose a lot of money, and when there's a lot of money tied into things, there's livelihoods that go into it as well, right? So this is kind of my entire point around being open, transparent, and truly decentralized is people would be able to view the infrastructure and then manage their level of risk appropriate to how they are comfortable with what your exchange does. There's a lot of talk around like ADL and whether it's fair to profitable traders, but you got to understand if you're trading on a decentralized exchange, like there has to be, some sacrifice there, right? So like when you're liquidated, it's either insufficient liquidity or the account's gone into negative equity. But like you're trading on a platform where ADL is a known rule. Like for books to be able to stay solvent, like we don't get bailouts from banks, we don't get an injection of capital from the revenue that's made like this, some centralized thing you can just turn on and off. So there has to be a level of acceptance with the environment you trade in. But going into like how we handle ADL, like I do think some of the ADL was handled a bit sus. But again, because things aren't open source and transparent, you're never truly able to sort of verify. So with our implementation of ADL, it's as fair as possible. So it's a scoring bias. Like you have the ADL bias parameter, which controls and targets like the most profitable traders or like the most evenly distributed. And this can be tuned by like studying the book and identifying like being portfolio aware what it considers in terms of like the full context of the book and the people on it, rather than just individual positions. So at the end of the day, it's an optimization problem, and whatever the best position to close to cover the downfall is should be sort of like scared, like haircut off like that, rather than it just being like a blanket. Okay, you all get your haircut here, and then that pays back to the traders. There's like many people hate ADL, and it's there as a final backstop. So 9 times out of 10, you won't ever see it happening, right? Like you'll see many things happen, like partial liquidations or even just trade liquidations happen before this. But like the book cannot go into negative equity if it's a purely decentralized book, right? Like it needs to be able to sort of protect itself against insolvency, and this is how that works, right? So the argument then goes to what is a fair ADL practice, and it's hard to sort of gauge what's fair and what's not when you can't view people's ADL practices because they're closed source. So not naming any names of exchanges is pretty blanket statement, but in my opinion, like you need to, if you're claiming to be one thing, like it shouldn't be a claim, it should be on chain and verifiable. So that'd be my opinion there.
For those who may have joined late, we are talking about all things leverage trading with one of the founders of Bulk. Make sure that you send this to 2 people that you think are interested in leverage within the crypto market. As an added bonus, if this gets on the trending page, I will drop out of college and record it and post it on X. Please like, comment, retweet. I know everyone wants to see that. Kind of shifting gears a little bit just because we're kind of on the topic of leverage. In high school, I interned at a hedge fund, and they basically had me read a bunch of different research papers about risk management. One of the papers they had me read was about someone who calculated the level of leverage that Berkshire used. Warren Buffett, as it turns out, had Berkshire Hathaway on the entire portfolio on 1.6x leverage. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's got the cash most of the time to be able to support that if he needs to. But I think like when there's plays that you're more confident on, and like you're wanting to take more of a directional bet than usual, then upping a bit of leverage isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? And Like this is just the game that we're playing, right? It's like anything. Instead of spending your own money, you'll borrow more, and then your buying power becomes more. And as long as your interest is earning more than what you've borrowed interest, then you're able to sort of keep cycling that back through, right? And I think where Berkshire Hathaway really excelled is they made a lot of fantastic bets early on, but they've also kept a very good amount in cash for these exact reasons, right? So they're able to sort of take a little bit more risk without actually taking more risk, in the sense of like, there's no way that he's ever going to let that go bust. Don't even think there was even a possibility of it going bust. And if he needs to sort of like add more of a I'll say margin like it's leverage, but like add more collateral to cover the basis of those trades, then that was exactly what he would do. But yeah, I think like at some point in the trading game, like just a straight spot hold just isn't quite enough, right? And even people as disciplined as Berkshire Hathaway and these other funds, like if they are truly like wanting to capitalize on a period of time or a particular sector, then it's natural or completely normal to be able to sort of like be a bit more comfortable adding a bit of leverage to your portfolio. But again, like we're talking about billions and trillions of dollars here, so there is obviously probably elements of risk and tolerance that even I don't understand or can't speak to his mindset of. But yeah, I mean, like he's always been in a position where if he needed to get access to more capital, he could. He had lots of cash on standby, and he had a very diverse portfolio where wasn't really gonna blow up overnight in any direction. So yeah, I think is cool, right? It gives the degenerates some hope in what we're doing. A bit more reserved than what we're used to, but yeah, this I would be surprised if most of these funds, at least at some point in time during their company life cycle, weren't doing the same.
This has been, I remember I saw a tweet, I guess a couple of weeks ago now, that I think it was the top five most profitable traders on Hyperliquid in the summer of last year are now all underwater on their initial deposits. Why do we see so many of these high profile perps traders like round trip and more on their entire accounts? And given you mentioned this is where you made a lot of your money, how do people avoid that?
Yeah, so and look, I've been guilty of giving it back as well, right? But yeah, I think that at a certain point it stops becoming money and it starts to become a score, right? So at a certain level, money's just about keeping score, right? And that's in business and trading and everywhere. And like you look at some of these guys that have like 50, 60, 70 million dollar portfolios and they end up giving it all back the next year because it gets to a certain point, particularly when you're spending all of your time at the desk trading, where you are no longer making money for a purpose. You are straight up trading. And like anything, if in a casino or if in trading on books that are typically not in your favor, and you have people hunting your liquidations and things of this nature. Yeah, I mean, you stay in it long enough, you will end up giving it back, and that's the realities of the world we're in. Some people like if you could say now here if you made 50 million quid, you'd be like, wow, that's me done. I don't need to do anything anymore, right? And you can set sail. But if you genuinely believe you've got an edge and you believe you're good at something, why would you stop, right? And it's not until sometimes it's too late and you get the harsh realization that perhaps this isn't as easy as a game as you thought, that you realize that your portfolio is back down to levels that you're not comfortable with, and then you start chasing because you were at a certain level and it feels like you're now inferior to where you were, and you're taking back steps, and it's an easy thing to chase. Like I've round tripped multiple times in my career, like multiple seven figures in leverage, and luckily I did get to a point where I had enough discipline to sort of like call it a day on that scale. But I also have people that are far smarter than me and far better traders than me that have given far more back to the house. So yeah, it's a tough answer. It's a tough question to answer because Like, I think it's no longer about money at a certain point, and it's just about keeping score and believing that you have an edge and going. It's like for us that we get up and go and do a job for a living. This is what they do for a living, and if they think they're the best or they're striving to be the best, it becomes less about your P&L in terms of a monetary value and becomes more about percentages, and that's a scary game to play.
That's the other thing, and I would equate it to what Dell went through in the early 2000s. Of when Dell IPO'd, there were so many Dell employees who became millionaires. They started calling them Dellionaires. They had a problem where they're trying to figure out, you give someone generational wealth, how do you convince them to keep working? What they found was a lot less people left than they thought, because you don't want to be wealthy. You want to be wealthier than your friends. So if all your friends also got multi-million dollar pay packages, you don't care because you just want to be your friends. How that relates to crypto and leverage trading is I find that crypto has an amazing ability to filter for people of like different thresholds, where the top traders are all talking to each other, and it becomes kind of a boys club where even if if there's a bunch of guys sitting on 7 or 8 fig portfolios, they don't feel like wealthy because they're not wealthier than their boys. And that's what keeps them in the game.
Yeah, again, it goes back to the keeping score, right? Like, I personally know people that have blown up 9-figure portfolios, like just, within the space of 2 weeks, just, yeah, like enough to buy a country to now taking loans from people in certain chats. And it's a devastating place to be. It's always it's not for everyone. And again, like you rightly said, it becomes. And I don't know whether you're necessarily competing against your friends, but you certainly are keeping score. And you then comparison is the thief of joy, right? And if you see people doing better than you are, doesn't matter how well you're doing, there's always an upside to chase. Much easier to do when you don't have like a family and kids and like something that you can sort of like attribute that monetary gain towards. Like, you got to remember, crypto is a lonely sport, right? Like, most of us got into the space when all of our friends thought we were idiots and made a load of money where
They
we
still
started
do.
traveling the world, but all of our friends are still at work. And now, like, it's a lonely life, right? Like, I've lived this, the first 5 years of my nomad experience was, I'd made a good bit of money. All of my friends were at work. Like, I didn't make quite enough to retire everyone and just bring them out on a jolly with me for the rest of our lives. And you get stuck in this sort of equilibrium of, well, I've made enough, but not enough, so may as well jump back in. And that's where you start then giving it back, right? And yeah, I think it's easier if, someone who's already used to making these sorts of funds and, been around wealth a bit more, is able to sort of understand and not be sort of threatened by it, can realize the game's much easier. But you got to think, a load of these people that are alpha, like even your age, like 21, 19, like young men, young kids that are made like millions, that it doesn't feel earned. It doesn't feel like if they were working in the mines for 6 days a week for however many years to earn that, they're not gonna go piss it up at the casino, Like, that's like real earned blood, sweat, and tears money. Whereas a leverage trader can feel like it was luck. It was a gamble that paid off, and it's the thrill and it's the euphoria of winning. And sometimes people just get addicted to that feeling, and it's a dangerous game to play.
I do like it feels relevant. I just kind of put the 2 and 2 together here. But I remember reading about, because I know there's like a big gambling culture in Asia. And I remember reading about Macau and how people would go to Macau to go gamble. You kind of have to wonder like how more people don't just like ruin their lives if they have proximity or means to like get to Macau. But as it turns out, in a lot of Asia, there's also a little bit of a bribe culture. And people, the rule that they give themselves is like, you only gamble your bribe money. So then if you lose it all, it's not a big deal because you just got a bribe and maybe you wouldn't have got that. But if you win some, like, that's a little extra cash for you. Not that we're encouraging people to take bribes here on the Beluga podcast, but I will say just having like a mental stack of only going 20x long with a little bit of cash, not a bad idea if you have to scratch that itch.
Yeah, I mean, look, all I will say is you should only play with money that you can afford to lose, right? If you want to like if this is your career and you understand what you're doing and like not think you understand, but like truly understand how liquidity flows, how market structures work, and you're doing basis trades and all this sort of stuff, then fine. But if you're like just trying to trade leverage as little Jimmy with his 20x and $500 in a dream or whatever, like, just make sure you're only playing with what you can afford to lose, because far too many people get themselves in a hole where they lose more than they're comfortable with, and then they spend even more to try and get that back, and it's a tough cycle. So yeah, like, I can't speak to all the bribery stuff, but yeah, in terms of leverage, like it's something that should be respected, right? It is an art. There is lots of very cool things that you're able to do with it for capital efficiency, basis trades, pair trades, all these sorts of things. But if you're just taking directional bets with high leverage, with capital that you're not comfortable with losing, then I would check yourselves a little bit.
So we're going to go on to the lightning round. And the way the lightning round works is they're fast questions. Answers should be 30 seconds or less. And we're just trying to get your general takes on crypto. So are you ready for the lightning round?
Let's do it.
What's your favorite crypto?
Solana.
What was your most memorable trade?
Leverage was actually a Cardano trade for P&L, percentage P&L. Dollar P&L would have been Bonk meme coin.
What's your AI model of choice?
Don't use it. Barely use ChatGPT.
Interesting. Who's your favorite crypto influencer?
I'm a grown man. I don't have favorites. I'll
No
say
bit
Junebug
boy.
Soul. Junebug Soul, my founder, is my favorite influencer.
Are you bullish or bearish right now?
Price action bearish. Fundamentals bullish.
Well, I think we already know the answer to this question. Ethereum or Solana?
Sorry, Will. I'm gonna have to go with Solana.
What's
To
your
each
favorite
their
meme
own.
coin?
I'm not endorsing. Yeah. I'll keep it short. I don't have one.
And then finally, what's your hottest crypto take?
We need to put the D back in Dex.
Tough. All right. I thought this was a great conversation. Will, any final thoughts before we give Kdot the last word?
I'm not gonna fight you on the ETH versus Solana thing. I respect the views. I know that's what you're fishing for. No, I thought this was great, and I'm actually I haven't had a chance to test out the test net myself, but I will definitely be doing that. And yeah, excited to see what you guys release soon.
Oh yeah. No, thank you very much for having me on, guys. It's
Yeah,
been a
of course.
pleasure.
Before we let you go, our marketing guy will kill me if I don't ask you this question. Considering that in crypto, everyone wants to be a whale, and amongst the whales, belugas are the smartest whale. How do you become a crypto whale?
Time in the market over timing the market.
Respect. How can people stay abreast of what you're doing? Where should they go to learn about everything bulk and stay in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can hit socials, bulk trade on Twitter. You can go to our website, which is just bulk.trade. Obviously have telegrams and discord you can come and jump into if you want to ask any specific questions, but we've got a load of articles on socials, load of technical documentation. You can take a look around the website, and yeah, just keep that notification on, because we've got some interesting things coming out in the next few weeks.
Amazing. Thank you everyone for joining the Beluga live stream and following along. This was a super fascinating conversation. Make sure that you like, comment, follow all the panelists. Make sure you retweet so I can drop out of school. Also, make sure you subscribe to our newsletter, heybeluga.com, and turn on notifications so you can get updated on the next live stream. We do them every week, and we try to have the best guests in crypto. So thank you, everyone.